Welcome to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast, where you can learn and be inspired by real-world examples of how technology is transforming businesses and reshaping industries in a language everyone can understand. Here is your host, Neil C. Hughes.
Space, the final frontier. Yes, gang, I want to take you all on a space exploration mission because I've recently learned about a company called Morpheus Space and how they're disrupting the new space industry by introducing Agile Constellations, which is a fusion between cutting-edge electric propulsion and artificial intelligence. And Morpheus Space is built on more than a decade of friendship and professional collaboration by a team of innovators, engineers and entrepreneurs, all with a shared dream to accelerate the growth of the space industry. So I want to learn more about how they're on a mission to redefine satellite mobility and serving as the support for those innovators chasing the ultimate dream of space exploration. So buckle up and hold on tight as I beam your ears all the way to Dresden in Germany, where CEO Daniel Bock is waiting to speak with us today. So a massive warm welcome to the show, Daniel. Can you tell the listeners a little about who you are and what you do?
Hi, Neil. Thank you very much for having me. So I'm Daniel Bock, and I'm based in Germany. And I always was basically attracted by math and physics. And also space. And space fascinated me as long as I can think. So it was quite clear for me for quite some time to work in space-related topics. So I decided to study aerospace engineering at the University of Technology in Dresden, Germany, in 2008. And I specialized in electric propulsion systems for satellites. And I back then invented the smallest and efficient and also most scalable electric propulsion system for satellites. And during the years of my research, I got to know a lot of people, and we then decided in 2018 to found Morpheus Space, which provides the in-space mobility for everyone. And our big goal is to make space as much as accessible as possible to really benefit from what we can achieve with space.
It's incredibly cool, and I feel I've got to dig a little bit deeper on your origin story there. So math, physics, space, technology, where did all that come from? What lit the spark in you and essentially put you on the path that you're on today?
This is an interesting question. So I was always fascinated by space because of the infinity and the borderless character of space. And this has always blown my mind, basically. And so if you think about it, infinity and the scale of space, you instantly feel small and also all the issues you may have in your daily life. And this brings everything into perspective. And even the biggest problems that you might see seem very small and insignificant. And this also made me think a lot about what basically limits us as humankind. And I think the biggest limitation is still our imagination. If you think about space, we can endeavor so much and create and change so much and make our lives much easier if we are just brave enough and try to break that limitation of our imagination. So this was always the background why I was so fascinated about space. And why I'm fascinated about tech is basically it provides the tools and solves problems, small problems, but to answer the big questions. I always saw it as a tool, but also a really interesting tool if you really dive into it.
Wow, what a cool story. And of course, from that spark being lit in you, you went on to become the CEO and co-founder of Morpheus Space. We'll have a lot of people listening, hearing about you for the first time. So can you just set the scene and tell the listeners a little bit more about the story wanting to build this scalable and efficient spacecraft electric propulsion system? Sounds incredibly cool, straight out of Star Trek. But can you set the scene there?
Yeah, so as I said, I studied aerospace engineering at the University in Dresden. And when I was about to choose my specialization for my master's, the university got a new professor and he brought a very special technology with him, which is called field emission electric propulsion. And I was one of his first students, and was absolutely fascinated by that kind of technology, which was basically invented in the 1960s for terrestrial use, but never really took place to be used in space as a propulsion system back then. And so I, basically started my research, became an assistant professor in space propulsion, and started my PhD, so a very classical academic path. And when I dived into it, and we basically miniaturized the whole technology to make it feasible for even the smallest spacecraft that there are, so below 1 kilogram of satellite mass, I realized that there's a huge potential that we can basically provide maneuverability to even the smallest satellites, which was not possible back then. And so we also launched a satellite in 2018, which was 1 kilogram only. And this satellite successfully changed the orbit of the satellite and also performed the first successful collision avoidance maneuver. And so with this proof of concept and in our hand, I asked some of my co-founders back then to basically drop their academic career, drop their PhDs mostly, and found a company in 2018, because we also saw the huge commercial potential behind our technology.
And whether it is the concept of fold space in Dune, or warp drive in Star Trek, or light speed in Star Wars, sci-fi creators and fans alike have always been intrigued by the idea of just moving from one galaxy to another galaxy in a blink of an eye. And I'm going to regret asking this question, but I do like to bust a few myths on this podcast. So go on, I'll let you tell me, what is it that Hollywood gets wrong regarding space travel?
I think this is maybe not the interesting question. So if you really want to understand sci-fi, I think it's not about being extremely accurate. If you want to be accurate, you should watch documentation, I would say. But sci-fi is about inspiration and what might be possible in future. So it's, of course, extremely difficult to make it accurate. And so I see sci-fi as a source of inspiration, basically. And of course, there are small mistakes in Hollywood movies, like they, for example, thrusting in the wrong directions. What we basically know, okay, this is not accurate, but it's more about the bigger picture, bigger story of sci-fi. And I think it's also was always a big inspiration for tech development. So if you think about Jules Verne's books, which was the inspiration for human space exploration and spaceflight, or the Star Trek's communicator that inspired the cell phone development and smartphones later on. So I think we are inspired somehow by arts, and this is the beautiful thing about sci-fi, not really about being accurate.
Thank you so much for not ruining all my childhood movies there. That's a very diplomatic answer. And I'm curious, though, what does the industry need to do to keep ESG initiatives at the forefront right now, would you say?
Yeah, so we are in a very exciting time of real exponential growth for the space industry. So we are shifting from an agency-based industry to a real commercial industry. And we have, for example, since the launch of Sputnik, the first satellite in 1957, we had only about a few thousands of satellites launched up into space. And now, tens of thousands of satellites will be launched in the next 10 years. So it's a really exponential growth in satellite numbers. And we already have a very crowded and a lot of debris in space already. And these tens of thousands of satellites will be launched in very specific orbits. So it's getting to be very crowded up there. And these debris parts also pose a huge risk of collisions. And these debris parts can basically also exponentially grow. And we might end up at the point where we cannot access space anymore. So we couldn't do any space exploration anymore, or even the space-based services like GPS or weather data or Earth observation data would be not accessible anymore. And so we would basically would thrown back to the Stone Age technology, Stone Age. So we have to tackle that problem of space debris, and we need to mitigate the creation of new space debris. So we need to take care that every new satellite gets deorbited properly, and also to remove the high-risk debris parts up there, which are already there.
And before you came on the podcast today, I was doing a little bit of research on you guys and the kind of work that you're doing right now. And I quickly learned that last month you announced an entirely new ecosystem called Sphere and a proprietary propellant. Can you tell me a little bit more about that for anyone that is hearing about it for the first time?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Sphere concept of Sphere is basically a whole ecosystem around in-space mobility that we've created. And our motivation behind that was that space is still very exclusive. So there are only a small group of people worldwide that can basically offer space-based services. And we at Morpheus Space think that space should be a commodity for everyone, and that we have to improve the access to space and to make technology more accessible, and to basically open it up to other industries like the automotive industry and insurance industry. And yeah, it's basically also only limited by our imagination where we can apply space technology. And so we believe the space is the new internet. And today, almost every company is an internet company, but we think that space is the next backbone of the economy. And in the future, every company will be a space company in some manner. So not everyone will launch satellites into space, but we will use space-based services. And to break up this exclusivity of space, we've created a Sphere ecosystem to lower the barriers of entry on the technological side, but also on the economical level. For example, there are different elements of our ecosystem. Sphere Go, which includes our propulsion systems. Answer the question how you move a satellite, so how you get from A to B. And we also are working on solutions to automatize maneuverability in space. So we have Sphere Direct, which is an autopilot for satellites. So you basically determine your destination and the satellite will fly on its own to that destination. So besides the automatization of maneuvers of single satellites, we are also working on a dynamic satellite constellation software that will enable to dynamically change the shape of satellite networks to basically provide services on a dynamic. And this is a first of its kind, and it's really hard and difficult problem to solve. So we need to apply artificial intelligence software to solve that problem. And our goal is to make satellite mobility, bottom line, as simple as possible on the technological side, but also on the economical level, as I said. And so we've also came up with the first of its kind hardware as a service business model for space hardware. So where you basically only pay a very small upfront cost to get the hardware, and then you basically pay it by the hour. So whatever kind of service you are providing, you can basically only pay for the usage of it. And this is not only applicable for our propulsion systems and mobility, but also for any hardware on a satellite or even whole satellites performing services. So with this new concept and new hardware business model, we make it much easier for newcomers and new space companies to get their technology in space and basically shift their high capex to OpEx.
It really feels 2021 was the year of this renewed interest in space. We've seen everything from William Shatner going up to space. I think it was 90 at the time. We've had NASA's Mars Perseverance rover landing on the red planet there. And I think there's even talk of NASA landing on an asteroid to push it in the right direction. I think there's this whole thirst for exploration again and looking beyond our planet and the kind of opportunities available. So I'm curious, though, what is it that excites you about the future and everything that you're seeing at the moment? And also about the role that Morpheus Space will play in that future too.
Yeah, so I'm very excited about the space exploration future and being on the edge of where it might be possible to civilize other celestial bodies, other planets. But also on the more industrial side, it's very exciting. We are at the edge of where we basically really benefit from space technology, where a lot of new companies will apply space as a backbone of our civilization and apply new cutting-edge technologies from different industries to solve problems we might have not thought about, to use it by using space, and to also answer or provide solutions for the big issues and challenges we have in the now and in the future, like the climate change or conflicts on Earth. And we at Morpheus Space want to be a part of that and at least play a little role to make space much more cost effective and much more accessible to everyone. And to participate in answering these big questions.
And just as a guy with a curious mind here on planet Earth, I'm curious on your opinions around space junk. There's been a story recently about Earth could eventually have its own Saturn-like rings because of the amount of junk flying around there and it's hit space stations, etc. And then there's also the other callings from astronomers who are complaining about the thousands of satellites up there and the real cost of that because it could cause light pollution. I'm curious, as somebody I would expect that would like to geek out on stuff like this. What's your take on it all?
Yeah, space junk or space debris is a real big problem for the space industry and for us here on Earth and in general. We cannot make the same mistake as we did in the climate change to just let it happen, and then try to live with it. So we need to be proactive, and space debris is a huge problem, and we need to implement countermeasures, mitigation measures to not make it a catastrophe. On the light pollution side, I understand, of course, the astronomers that their measurements are basically messed up sometimes if a lot of satellites are crossing the sky. But on the other side, I think we are also, we should think about building up telescopes in space more often. So you basically have a decreased quality if you have a telescope on Earth either way. So the best solution would be to bring the telescopes up in space and then basically do better research. So I understand that it's now a big issue because you cannot instantly build up new telescopes in space. But for the future, I think the way to go is to also place telescopes more often in space. And of course, we need to make our satellites less light pollutant. I don't know if that's a word.
Oh, man, love that. I've loved chatting with you today. I feel like I've learned a lot in our conversation over the last 30 minutes. We started with your origin story. What put you on this path? What lit that spark in you with math, physics, technology and space, etc.? But now I'm going to have a bit of fun with you and ask you, what has been the soundtrack to your story? There's a lot of space-related songs out there. I'm curious if you're going to choose one. But is there a song and a story you can share with us? And we'll add that song to the Spotify playlist.
Yeah, so I don't really have a song of my life, but I have two songs that basically I hear on repeat and in different occasions. So if I need motivation and a reminder of that everything is possible and that the key to it is change, and basically I always choose Sia, Courage to Change. This really pumps me up and motivates me. And if I want to get in the zone and really deeply focus and also broaden my horizon and think about strategy, I'm a big fan of Ludovico Einaudi, and I always hear the Earth Prelude.
What a great choice. Both of them. I'll add both of those to the Spotify playlist. And for anyone listening that just wants to find out a little bit more information about Morpheus Space, the kind of things we talked about today, what's the best way of finding you online and contacting your team if they've got any questions? Absolutely. Check out our website on www.morpheus-space.com. And also feel free to follow us on our socials and shoot us a message on LinkedIn, Twitter, or Facebook. Excellent. I'll add those links to the blog posts that will accompany this episode so people can find you nice and easily. If you've got any great videos, I might lift one of them and put one of those on there too. But more than anything, thank you for coming on here, educating me and everyone listening about the future of space and also sharing your story on a couple of great tunes too. So thanks for joining me today, Daniel. Thank you very much, Neil, for having me. So the solution package from Morpheus Space enables satellite providers to operate entire constellations as one entity, all thanks to this highly efficient propulsion system. And each satellite can then perform countless orbital manoeuvres which allow for the first time the possibility of objective-first mission planning with an automated trade-off. And this provides a never-seen-before flexibility of satellite networks that is exploited by the AI to optimally morph the constellations to fulfill the user's objectives, which can range from revisit frequencies to observation of moving POIs and so much more. But as always, this is not my area of expertise. I'm the guy with a curious mind that gets guests on here to try and make sense of it all. So please, I now turn the microphone over to you. I invite you to share your insights, thoughts, experiences, and so much more. Whatever it is, even questions. I'm an open book. So email me, techblogwriter@outlook.com, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn at Neil C. Hughes. And my website is techblogwriter.co.uk. So I will speak with you all bright and early tomorrow, and I'll beam your ears to another part of the world with another guest. But roads, where we're going, we don't need roads. So thank you for listening. And until next time, don't be a stranger.
Thank you for listening to the Tech Talks Daily Podcast with Neil C. Hughes. Remember, technology works best when it brings people together.